guys, welcome to this video on the Roman Gallic. So I got this helmet a couple of weeks ago now, and I did sort of a show-off video, but I didn't do a video directly on it. So I have also finished the armour stand that I was making to hold this armour, and in this video I'm going to sort of talk about this specific helmet and a little bit about the helmet historically. So firstly, this is called a Roman Gallic. It's a Type H. So this helmet was used around the 1st century BC to the 2nd or 3rd century AD. As you can see, it's silver. This here is made of steel. Historically they were made of iron and brass. The brass just being the brass colouring that you see on this. So this helmet is from the Knight shop. It's about £50. I shipped it here to Canada with this lorica, and it arrived in 2 days, which was quite a nice surprise. It's not the most accurate helmet you will find, but for the price point, and I'll put a picture up here in a second, but it looks a lot like this specific historical find. Now it is quite light. The inside is painted black. It has sort of like a leather thong. There are some oil marks and stuff from where it was wrapped in the plastic that I couldn't quite get off even using an oil cleaner, but I haven't really tried. There's a few little spills of I'm not quite sure what it is. It looks a little bit like paint, but I think it might just be something to do with the metal where it's rubbed and some of the colourings come off, but it's nothing too big. Now, one thing that I didn't notice until I first got it was actually that there's a 7 imprinted on the bottom of the brow piece. So I'm not quite sure why that's there. I'm sure it's probably to do with something with the different screws and stuff to attach the brow. Now it does come with padding. This specific padding actually came with my Corinthian helmet, but I found that the padding that came with this worked better with my Corinthian helmet because where my linothorax neck guard would come up, the neck guard of the Corinthian helmet would clash with the neck guard of the linothorax, and as the one for this helmet was a little bit more poofy, it lifted the helmet up enough, and as it was a lot bigger, through the ear holes and stuff of the Gallic you could see it, whereas with my enclosed early Corinthian helmet you can't. So I switched those out, so this isn't the exact one that it comes with, but it does come with a helmet cap. It does also come with a point where you can attach a crest. Now this is one thing that I find really cool about Roman helmets, is that unlike Greek helmets, where we know that they had crests due to paintings, sculptures, documentations, the Romans actually have this sort of mechanism where there's 2 rings up here and a slot, and basically they're, for the legionary anyway, the plumes were only for ceremonial events, so basically it would slot through here and it would tie down to these 2 rings on either side. Now centurions and optios had plumes anyway. Centurions had sideways ones, and optios usually had frontwards ones, and sometimes you see these feathers coming out this side. Now this helmet is quite a good representation. As I said, it's not the most historically accurate, but if you don't want to pay $1,000 for a perfectly historically accurate helmet like me, this is quite a good sort of point. It looks quite close, and especially for people that don't know loads about Roman history, and still to me, who still looked into it, this is very clearly a Gallic. It's not like lots of my Corinthian helmet replicas that I previously got before I knew much about it, and when I look at a historically accurate one compared to a non-historically accurate one, one of them looks like a dollar store rip-off of the other. Whereas this, when you see next to a perfect Gallic, you can see there's a little bit of a difference, but it's not nearly, it doesn't nearly stand out as much. So I'm going to put this on, and I will be also doing a video where I compare this to a Corinthian helmet, as obviously the Romans took a lot of inspiration from the Greeks. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on, and then I'll talk to you a bit about how it feels, neck guard in practicality, and cheek pieces. So first you'd have to put on the cap. This partly pulls your hair back out of your eyes and it pads it out and fits better. Now this, sorry, one thing I forgot to mention is that where this sort of isn't the most accurate is that it is a perfectly circular helmet dome, whereas a human head is not a circle. It's a little bit of an oval shaped, so historically they probably wouldn't have been as round, but that is a really minor nitpick. So it sort of just sits on your head, and the way that this is looped through is basically one of them goes through this loophole, and then through the other side. It's a bit hard to see, I'm just going to twist it round. The other loop on the other cheek guard, you slide it through, and then this sort of allows you to adjust your chin tightness, and then I just tie a bow. You sort of want to make sure that they're roughly the same length. This can be a little bit fiddly sometimes. Sometimes I get it instantly, other times it takes a bit longer. Some people tie it sort of, I'll show you in just a sec, but it's just here is always the hardest part. I think that's it. It's not being able to see. And this, as you can see, I just muffed that up. But anyway, you get the point. Other people sort of tip the helmet up like that so they can actually see it, but then I find whenever I try that, that the cheek guard doesn't quite fit properly. So let me just... So they basically tip the helmet back and then tie a knot this way, which is definitely an easier way to do it, but I wouldn't say the helmet fits you quite as good. But as you can see, I have successfully tied a bow, but it also doesn't quite fit my chin as well, which makes these move around, which is one thing that some late Greek helmets had, these hinges. Obviously Roman helmets, it's one of the most sort of Roman features of a helmet. So when a Roman soldier was beaten in combat, obviously people with Roman armour was very good, so they'd want to scavenge it. And invariably lots of Celts and stuff would actually remove the cheek guards of the helmets because they were just too Roman. Which I think is sort of funny, as they're a major source of protection, and without it your head is completely exposed. And that is one thing that I do find really interesting with the Gallic, is my whole face from here, my eyes, my nose and my mouth are completely open, whereas on a Corinthian helmet, for instance, I have eyes and then basically nothing. And you get other Greek helmets like an Illyrian helmet where it just comes down, whereas the Gallic sort of is a mix between them both, in the fact that it has a cheek guard here but it's bendable. It also resembles a bit of a Thracian helmet. If you don't know what that is, I'll put another picture up. But having these movable cheek guards, I could also tie them up here if I really want to let the air get to my face. But one thing as well is that it's not solid. I mean, that if I get hit by either a fist or a sword or a spear or an arrow, something, the cheek guard's not solid, meaning that it pushes into me, which I find quite interesting, because that can be stronger, but it can also be weaker. So obviously, it's why buildings, for instance, actually move when the wind blows. It's not solid, because if it gets to a certain tipping point, or whatever, then it would snap. Whereas you want it to slightly give, right? So with this, compared to a Corinthian helmet has solid cheek guards, meaning that if something hits it, the cheek guard absorbs the whole thing. But if that force is enough to bend it, the cheek guard is then pushed permanently into me, which might not be comfortable, and it's a little bit harder to fix. Whereas with a Gallic, the force is immediately, the sharpness is taken away from the cheek guard, but the force is put into my jaw and pushes it to the side. So I find that a bit interesting, is as you would have your scutum and you would be sideways, and you'd have a gladius, which I don't have a scutum or a gladius right now. I'm thinking about possibly making a scutum like I did with my aspis, but I'm not sure yet. But yeah, and obviously when I talk, these things move, which is a little bit annoying, but it also is, otherwise, if it was fully tight, I wouldn't be able to move my mouth. So, it's quite a smart design overall. This brow would be used so if a blow would come from the top, it would sort of absorb most of the hit. And it also has these wings here, which aren't just decorative, they're actually crumple points. So if something hits here, it would give, almost like an airbag, if you will, or the front of a car when you crash, it sort of crumples to absorb the impact, sort of what these act as well. Now, iron and stuff does rust, and that is one thing where I'll talk about when I do a video on this as the Lorica segmentata, is that would the bronze helmets actually be better as they didn't rust, though they do oxidize. They did have ways to treat rust back then, but especially if you're going into England where it rains and stuff, your iron armour, which is what this Gallic would historically be made of, would rust quite a bit. But the brass, and that is one thing on the pictures that I showed earlier, is that it goes all green and stuff, but then the brass is still brass. So, I don't know, what choices do you think that they maybe, why would they choose iron? I know it's a strong metal and stuff, but I want to hear sort of what you guys think, so put a comment down below, and maybe next video when I talk about this, I'll post some of your comments up, and I'll talk about what I think about them. So going back to this Gallic specifically from the Night Shot, it's made by a company called Deepika in India. They do a lot of other reproductions and stuff. Lots of their medieval stuff is not that great, neither is their Greek stuff, but I have found that their Roman stuff is alright. This is also made by Deepika, I do believe. But yeah, it's quite a nice helmet overall. I would recommend it. I did buy it, obviously. If you guys want to know sort of my tips and tricks to find a good, historically accurate item, I'll put a video down below where I talk about that sole purpose of where to find armour for reenacting. But yeah, I'll leave a link where you can find this helmet in the description. I would definitely recommend it if you're sort of not sure about Roman armour yet. Overall, I think it is quite historically accurate, especially from the picture, and I will post it again next to it. I think it is quite historically accurate, and I would recommend it if you're sort of starting Roman armour. And the Metatron, if anyone's familiar with him, if you watch Roman videos, you've probably come across one of his videos before. This is actually one of the helmets that he has, and he does a very good video on historically accurate Roman helmet versus a non-historically accurate Roman helmet, and I will put that in the description as well. And yeah, I think it's overall quite nice. The hinges work well. It's quite strong. And one other thing that I did want to sort of talk about, not necessarily just about the helmet, but sort of to wrap this video up, is sort of different things that I think this helmet could be used for. More or less, the ridiculously big neck piece, the brow, the ear pieces, and sort of talk about why that part itself was so large. Okay, so this neck guard is really big, and it's doesn't come flush to my neck either, it sort of juts out. Now the main reason that I personally think that this happened was, for one, Lorica segmentata, unlike Elenothorax, didn't have a neck piece that came up as of we know of. But if you, let me put this back on again. So if you have a scutum when you're this way, and a sword comes down, because the shield you sort of hold flat down. Sorry, my cap's not in the right spot, but I'm just going to leave it. So if a sword comes down this way, my face is open, meaning that I have to turn my head. It's also a human reflex to turn your head, meaning that the sword, instead of then hitting my shoulder or my face, it then would come down and clash this neck guard. Brow I already talked about was for upwards blows. Also, if you duck, instead of, as this is a dome, arrows and stuff would slide down, and instead of sliding down into your face, it would slide and hit and deflect off. And same with these earpieces, it's the same with any hole in a helmet, whether it be an eye or an ear. You look throughout helmets, not just Roman helmets, and they always have something trying to prevent a blade from going through that hole. So Corinthian helmets have a ridge outside of the eyes. So if a blade hits it, then hits the ridge and doesn't go up into your skull. Now with these earpieces, as there's essentially, without the cheek guard, it is just that brow, and then it comes up into a hole. So these caps, again, I think are for if weapons come down, they don't go into your earpiece or ear, they bounce off. Yeah, again, I want you guys to comment your thoughts on this helmet and historically what these parts would be used for. So if you guys want to, again, drop a comment for that, then I will look at those at some point as well. And yeah, I would say this is probably about 7, 8 out of 10 for accuracy. For the price point, it is really good. But yes, and stay tuned for the Lorica Segmentata video coming out at some point. And I do have some really cool videos planned, but I can't do them right now due to something, and I'm not going to say yet, because I sort of want it to be, it's going to be a big change, a good change, nothing video content change, but video quality change that will happen. So lots of these videos I sort of wanted to wait until I get something that will make those better. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that you learned a little bit about the Gallic. I will be doing a video in the future where I compare this to a Corinthian helmet and sort of see the pros and cons of each of them, and give my overall opinion on which one do I think was an overall better design. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.